All right. Welcome to this edition of the Saga of the Clone Saga, aka the Clone Zone, the Spider-Man podcast put on by the students of S.H.I.E.L.D. As we attempt to make our ways and delve into the madness of reading every arc, issue by issue, of the infamous 1990s Spider-Man Clone Saga. I'm Mike, and I'm alongside today with...
Hi, Matt.
And I'm Vincent.
And before we get started with today's wonderful episode, our sponsor, we have a very special sponsor this week, as our other co-host, William, is not able to be here as he is currently studying for finals. So sponsor this week will be the concept of studying. Make sure to get good grades in school.
Stay in school, kids.
Just like Spider-Man.
Spider-Man would tell you that. And we'll get to that, Spider-Man doesn't always stay in school. That's quickly referenced in the story. So this episode, we're covering two arcs. First, we have the 4-part Exiled story, and then the 2-part Time Bomb story. And from last episode, we are now moving into the cover date of September 1995.
We're a month away from my birth.
Yep. We'll shout you out on that one, too. Matt and I had our little celebration last episode.
We did. We had cake. It was great.
At least we have to wait like 2 more publication years time for it to get his.
Yep.
So the first issue, Web of Spider-Man 128, we have a color of a silhouette Spider-Man, and the question, who will wear the webs?
Who will wield the shield?
And the question is, just right off the bat, let's spoil it, is that question answered in this story?
Yes.
It should.
It's not really.
It is and it isn't.
Well, it's answered after the first issue, and then it's unanswered or something.
So our creative team here, we have Tom DeFalco on plot, Todd DeZago on script, and Stephen Butler on the art. And I'm pretty sure this has happened like the last 1 or 2 episodes, but I think Todd DeZago is like scripting like 75% of the books right now.
It seems like it.
It's kind of weird. And we open with...
We're starting to get things looking really, really 90s at this point. Like, this cover looks really 90s. Like, it's all in the coloring. It's like this weird early computer coloring.
Yeah. But especially when you open to the first page, which is a splash page of Black Cat swinging around. And Stephen Butler's art, this is ridiculous.
He made some anatomy choices that are questionable at best.
Yeah, we should have hotline Taylor in to critique this. So Black Cat at this point, she actually had a miniseries in July 1994, which overlaps like 1 month with the Clone Saga itself, and that was written by Terry Kavanagh. And I mentioned this on our Maximum Clonage episode, but I just want to remind everyone that Terry Kavanagh was previously the Web of Spider-Man writer. He was the one person who initially proposed the entire Clone Saga, and he is now gone.
So we can all blame him for this.
Yes. But her plotline is getting picked up, I guess, from the when we last saw her during the trial stuff, where she showed up to hang out with Pete in prison, and they didn't recognize each other. And I feel like that was a long time ago, but I guess it wasn't really. I kind of forgot about this Black Cat thing.
It feels like a lifetime ago. When she popped up for no reason and then disappeared.
Also, so at that point, she, like, MJ told her, like, oh yeah, Ben Reilly's a clone. And like Black Cat knew that. But then in the captions in this issue, she seems to know that Peter is the clone now.
Yeah.
And I don't know when that happened. She just got that information.
When did she get the spiked collar?
I don't know.
I'm going back and noticing this now, and as she's swinging around, this Dr. Destiny looking guy swipes her.
Let me get to that. So I want to note that she is suffering from depression.
She does say that explicitly.
She points that out. And so...
Is she reading the Clone Saga as well?
Yeah, and she's also angsty that she loved a clone. Because, I don't know.
Because he's not a real man.
And Matt, did you know who showed up?
No, at first, not until later when they say his name, I had no idea who this was.
All right,
I thought it was Dr. Destiny, but he's a DC villain.
I want you to know that this is Despair, spelled exactly as stupid as you think.
So that's how you pronounce it. Okay.
Yeah,
And
Despair.
Despair is a demon, and he's a fear lord. And there are a bunch of fear lords within the Marvel universe. It's like a really weird part of the supernatural lore.
It's great.
And there was actually a trade released like this year or last year focusing on the fear lords.
What?
And I have no idea why they released that. Like they like marketed it by titling it like Doctor Strange and the Fear Lords, but like Doctor Strange shows up in like one of the issues. But the reason Despair specifically is an interesting Fear Lord and why Matt might want to know is his first appearance was in Marvel Team Up 68, obviously Spider-Man, but that was a Claremont and John Byrne issue with the Man-Thing.
Yeah. Yes. And he also didn't he also appear in Uncanny X-Men with the Man-Thing and Scott?
Yeah, he like fucks with what's her name? Something Forrester.
Lee Forrester.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fucks with Lee Forrester.
And Man-Thing also appears in that.
Yep. So I guess that
The
parallel
Man-Thing
kind of
rogue.
makes sense. He's like all about negative energies and emotions or something.
Yeah.
So he shows up, and then Pete and Ben visit their uncle and aunt's graves together. And this is only funny because Ben in the next story arc visits his uncle's grave like 2 days later. And that time he has more of an excuse, but like I don't know.
I have one question. This is kind of a continuity thing. Peter Parker is from Queens, correct?
Yeah.
That's closer to the Mets, and it is basically said that Peter is a Mets fan. Why is Ben wearing a Yankees cap if he has all of Peter's memories? Wouldn't he also be a Mets fan?
You would think.
I don't know. He might just be like, I'm a clone. I'm gonna pick this slightly different thing.
Like,
I mean, like, they're a few years away from winning some World Series in the 90s. Like, they're getting good.
I mean, I think it makes sense. He's a clone. He's not a real human, and only people who aren't real humans will be Yankees fans. So,
but yeah, Peter Parker is a noted Mets fan.
Those Yankee teams in the 90s, though, they're fun to watch.
There's a great issue. It's in the Jenkins run. I'm pretty certain where it's a flashback issue with Peter going with Uncle Ben to.
Yeah, it's awesome. They go to every year. Like it would be the one game they go to, and something horrific to the Mets or them would always happen.
Yeah. But while they're chilling at the graveyard, they have a stalker, and so they follow this stalker. And I don't know if you guys noticed in the background, there's a bar named Jack's, which
yeah,
again,
there is.
it's unfortunate Billy couldn't join us. There are actually
every reference to the name Jack just always going to be him now. He led this other successful life that
he survived. We thought he melted, but he actually opened a bar in Manhattan.
Now the back of that T-shirt has to have that panel with Jax on it now too.
And they're tracking down this guy, and there's a scene where they both put on their costumes, and Peter's like, "Oh, you go first," and Ben's like, "No, it has to be you." And like that was I thought that was a cool moment. Like that's the moment that like I've been expecting, and we get it like every 10 issues. Like them actually working with each other and being cool.
That's kind of neat.
You get the close up of the handshake too in this issue a little later.
And then Pete makes a quip about Ben going to a Tom Jones concert.
Yeah, that was weird.
Right. Like, well, they crash the stalker. They show up and like, hey, we want to know why you're following our friend. And this guy doesn't go, oh, so you're Peter Parker and the dude he was with. Like he's
exactly.
two guys, and then two guys show up, like whatever.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Who's going to see Tom Jones in 1995?
I don't know. I'm not as familiar with the Tom Jones career track, but I want to know while we're on Tom Jones, Thunderball is one of, if not the best Bond theme.
It's also one of the better Bond movies.
It's pretty good.
I like the Bourne Identity.
I mean, Sean Connery made the movie twice. He said it was the favorite one he ever made. So,
and then Pete explains his relationship with Black Cat to Ben, and he's like, "Yeah, I used to fuck her, and like I'm still best friends with her, and she talks to my wife." And so that's all referencing. It's mostly that was a thing in the first half of the 1980s, mostly in Spectacular Spider-Man under Bill Mantlo, Al Milgrom, and Peter David. And then obviously MJ came back in and they got married, and then the whole Michelini run really built up MJ, or at least tried to. And so yeah, Despair's fucking around. He manipulates Black Cat, and then the scene where Pete breaks down in front of Black Cat, I thought it was hilarious because I thought it was serious for a second.
Are we not going to talk about Rolf?
MJ's friend, or like, or employer? I don't know what he is.
Employer friend. Have we ever seen this guy before, or is he just completely new?
I think he's new.
Okay.
What was his context? I didn't even take notes on Rolf.
He's hiring MJ to model maternity clothes.
Oh yeah.
We don't find that out until Spectacular.
Yeah, way later. Yeah, so
right.
MJ's current subplot, and we'll get back to this, is that she's...
Well, that's a giant continuity error, because the only issue in which MJ is drawn to start showing is that Spectacular issue. Other than that, she looks like she's not pregnant at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, so her current subplot is that she's getting a modeling offer for maternity clothing. And the first issue, the first time it's mentioned, it's not very clear that it's maternity clothes. But then later it's obvious.
I mean, unfortunately, this is the same as every subplot she ever gets. It's these people want to hire MJ to be a model, and is she going to do it? And that's it. That's all she ever does.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like, jumping ahead a bit, I think it's interesting in this instance because it's contrasted with, like, Pete questioning his career.
Sure.
There's a moment where Pete is like, "Oh, damn, I'm a fucking photographer, and I'm like 28 years old or however fake age he's supposed to be with the sliding timescale." And he's like, "I went to school for like biochemistry. Why am I taking photos of myself?" And if she's going to be this like big like maternity model, which that's probably not huge cash, but still, like, it's a dumb tension, but it's like, oh, she's making more money than him. She's working. He has the shit job, blah, blah.
Sure.
Yeah, so basically, Despair is manipulating everyone, and they win the fight because Ben Reilly recognizes Despair, and I was like, wait, that doesn't make sense. Despair appeared after the original Clone Saga, but then there's an editor's note saying that they met up in that 5-year gap, and they tease that maybe they'll show it to us eventually. We never get that.
Oh, I was so excited to see Ben Reilly affect Despair for the first time.
Which, again, that's another loophole. All my comic book aspiring writers and artists, I want to see Ben Reilly fight Despair, but in flashback, like set in 1980.
Yeah.
5-year gap. Yeah, so they win the fight. Despair disappears, whatever, his demon powers. Felicia runs away. And then we get the page of Ben and Pete arguing about who should be Spider-Man, which was I guess on paper supposed to be the point of this entire arc.
Sure.
And they don't really solve anything. Well, they can't. No, they do here. Ben, but they get the opposite solution of what we're supposed to be moving towards. Ben is like, I'll just go on the run again. And also, one of his reasoning is that he says, "You've been Spider-Man longer than I have." And just for the hell of it, I mean, it was pretty, I was certain about it, but chronologically / publication time, Ben Reilly was Spider-Man for 13 years. So from Amazing Fantasy 15 to 151.
Mm-hmm.
And then Peter has been Spider-Man for 20 years since then. So that checks out.
Okay.
And yeah, so Ben fucks off, and Pete and MJ due in part to her modeling job, which she also doesn't mention to Pete throughout both of these arcs once. They're going to stay in New York. And now we move into Amazing Spider-Man 405.
Well, here's the thing. This arc is titled Exiled, and it's a 4-part story. Okay. This could have very well not been part of Exiled at all. This could have just been like a one and done setting up something else. Like this didn't have to be looped in.
Right. Like I don't know if they labeled it Exiled Part 204, 304 because it would sell better or something, but the next 3 issues have nothing to do with the first one, and the 4th issue has nothing to do with the middle 2. This
is exactly the problem that we're getting into now. Is when we have 4 Spider-Man titles, we have to have arcs that can concede all of them. So things are very drawn out.
Yeah,
sure.
Despair and Black Cat, they're gone.
Yep, it's that issue reads like a one and done, like just how like Action, for example, like Action 999 was just a one and done, but still felt like part of the run. So
the second cover here, we have Ben wrapped up in some wires, getting shocked. It's a decent cover. It's fine.
Nothing to write home about. No big impressions there.
Well, they're wires that end in little claws. So I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, it's Doc Ock, right?
Yeah, that was my thing too. And then I was like, wait, Doc Ock's dead, and I know we don't see new Doc Ock until later. So
we don't?
No.
Yeah, that is coming up soon.
It's coming up soon, but not.
But yeah, I mean, from this cover, that's totally what you would think.
Well, and then there's more arms later. Okay, I guess we'll get into it.
Yeah.
So the creative team here is Dave Mateus on plot, DeZago again on scripting, and we have Derek Robertson on art, and I guess you call it a guest artist because don't worry, well, either worry or don't, depending on your perception, but Bagley is not gone. And so we're back to angsty Nomad Ben, and I also want to know, as far as continuity throughout this entire story arc, his hair gets longer and longer, like every hour.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Because it's a clone, and his hair clones itself, so it gets longer.
Yeah,
in the first Wolverines and Weapon X.
In the first issue, there's a scene where he and Pete both take their masks off and are across from each other. And Ben's hair is like slightly longer, but like it's not mullet style. And like now his hair is like flowing through the wind, and later he has a full-on mullet. And it's just further confused because there are flashbacks included. And in the flashbacks, he has the complete mullet like we saw in Lost Years.
Dude, he at the end of this story, he has beyond the mullet. He just has full-on like rocker long hair at that point.
Real flowing locks.
So,
and here he crashes his motorcycle because apparently he got so into his own head that he forgot to pay attention to the road. And I have to say, for me, this is the most relatable Ben Riley's ever been.
Are you going to tell your story on air?
I don't need to tell my whole story. I crashed my car a couple days ago.
Yeah, I didn't understand this part either because there are like 2 full pages devoted to this. And if he just like, got lost in it, but he says his spider sense, I guess would his spider sense go off if he's about to crash himself into a wall?
I guess.
I thought it was like, spider sense, crash because I'm distracted from that, and maybe also in my own head, and then villain shows up. But that's not what happens. And because he crashed, he takes the opportunity to put on his costume and then just swing around for a bit.
And then take it off. And I want this image of his going, "This is my city, the one home I've ever really known. It's where I'm drawn to. It's this," and then it's just him on a building yelling, "This is where I belong." Yeah. I want that to be like, you know how you have like tourist, like pieces of tourist art? I want that to be like in Times Square in New York, advertising New York as a place.
Yeah, but then
that image, Subway, that image, I love it.
But then I think the greatest panel in this issue is Peter Parker waking up from a nightmare, and he's just drenched in sweat. And it looked like the way Derek Robertson does it, it looks like he like cut the top of his forehead and it's just leaking water.
It looks like he's melting. It's kind of gross.
And it's really bad here, but in one of the other issues, another artist does that same like sweat effect. And I don't know why they all make it look like that, because it looks so bad.
And like MJ is just sleeping there, he's drenched.
Yeah.
He just soaked in his sweat right
Those
now.
sheets are going to need changed with how wet he is.
For sure.
And then he goes to his buddy Seward Trainer's cabin in Rachel, Vermont. And to my knowledge, Rachel, Vermont is not a real place. And it's not come up since. I mean, it's not come up so far. And it definitely, I don't think it was in Lost Years. So, whatever. So Ben Reilly, before he went to Utah, he spent some time in Vermont.
And Rachel Vermont into Google, and it's showing me results for a woman named Rachel Vermont.
And so we get all these flashbacks of how he met Seward Trainer, and it's basically just Ben Reilly being a dick over and over.
He's the worst human being.
He's an asshole.
He threatened someone's life for some food.
This guy shows up to pay for his room, who presumably is Dr. Trainer, but he looks completely different. And either he aged 20 years in 5 years, or just the artist didn't know what he looked like.
Yeah, I mean, he looks like a lot larger of a man.
Yes.
Which that's kind of weird, but like
I thought our friend Brandon Hyde showed up in the comic, actually.
Yeah, I guess depending on his exact age, because his hair turns from like full-on red to, I think, gray in the present. So depending on his age, maybe that works, but he totally looks different. And then in the present, Seward Trainer's cabin explodes, and Ben, I mean, it makes sense, but he assumes that it has absolutely nothing to do with he or Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm.
So he runs to New York to check on Trainer's main lab, and then there are these robot things which show up.
Right, robots with Doc Ock arms.
Yeah, they're kind of like they remind me of mini versions of the robots from The Incredibles.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
Then I didn't understand like the storytelling of the last like 2 or 3 pages of this issue.
It was weird.
Because it's like it shows us like a locked room, but then shows us Trainer in it. Like I couldn't follow it. It's like Ben Reilly gets locked up or grabbed, and then they show a door locked, but then they show in that room is Trainer. So the storytelling just didn't flow well, in my opinion.
No, it doesn't. Whatever's going on doesn't really make sense.
And especially with the change in appearance, for a second I was like, wait, did Seward Trainer get cloned too? Like, is a clone version of him locking himself up? I was bracing myself for that. And I honestly don't know if that would have been better.
I would love that. And by love that, I mean hate it, but I'd love that.
Yeah. So then we move into Spider-Man 62. This is a pretty boring cover.
Yeah. And again, like, there's that arm is clearly Dr. Octopus, right? I don't.
It looks a lot like it.
Yeah.
And so the creative team here, we have Howard Mackey as usual, and we have guest penciler, and he's credited as such, Pat Broderick. Broderick is mostly known for his work at DC. He co-created Tim Drake, and then in the 80s, he had these series of assignments. The first like 20 issues of Firestorm Volume 2, then the first like 24 issues of Captain Atom, then the first like 20 issues of Green Lantern Volume 3. And then for Marvel, his only continuous work for Marvel is Doom 2099, which eventually, like halfway through, was one of Warren Ellis's breakout runs.
Weird.
And I mean, there's a lot of pages in this issue, obviously, like the same as every other issue, but nothing really happens. Ben is bound up, being interrogated by a disembodied voice. and they're trying to extract something out of Ben. Like, it's not even clear what the heck they want. Like, they want this data that Trainer has, but how is Ben going to help them? How are they accomplishing that different? I guess the robots are trying to mine the data, and so they just have to hold off Ben maybe for a bit.
Right. Like this is confusing enough as it is, and then like halfway through, the yellow oval bubbles are for whoever's interrogating him, and the white one are Ben. And then halfway through the second page, they switch, and now Ben has the yellow captions.
Yeah, I know what it seemed like. One of them was definitely like there was a lettering error. One of them was miscolored. I don't know if they switched, but I was confused too because in the very beginning, it seems like it's an actual conversation because Ben seems to be directly replying, but then like a page later, they don't really connect. Like it seems like Ben's captions are independent of the others because Ben is like saying things that would be revealing, and then that's not. It doesn't make sense.
It doesn't at all. Yeah.
And Trainer's like being drowned or something.
He's like trapped in a room where like water is rising.
It's the most convoluted death trap because apparently they're taking the oxygen out of the room and also filling it with water.
Like you don't need. He's like, yeah, like you don't need to do both.
No.
Yeah, and then Ben like passes out like once or twice, and then we get more flashbacks of like his early relationship with Trainer. But in this issue, I don't think we get as much like actually important flashbacks. Like none of these flashbacks really tell us much about Ben or Trainer.
Not at all.
And then we flash back to Pete, and he has this weird moment where he crushes some bricks.
In an evil, evil smile.
Yeah, so some ominous stuff coming.
Yeah.
And
apparently his body is tense.
Yeah, and then the Vulture shows up, and he's hunting for life force. And I thought I hated young Vulture enough already, but this really ups the ante.
He's in this so much. But even like also like we see the Vulture and then it immediately goes back to flashbacks of Trainer and Ben. So it's just like, oh.
Actually, the one thing we learned from this flashback is that Trainer doesn't back up his work. Because there's like some mess, there's like some emergency, and he's like, oh no, I didn't back things up. Let me back things up real quick.
What sort of scientist? And then apparently, according to like the present timeline, he still isn't backing anything up because he said that again.
Yeah.
See what the universe is. Where's scientist?
I mean, he has to be.
And then
where's David fucking never mind. That joke wasn't gonna work. I'll forget his name.
I would love for like Reed Richards and like Bruce Banner to like meet him and be like, you don't what?
Just then, like critique him. I don't know why this stood out to me, but there's like two panels where I don't even remember if it's Ben or Pete. I think it's Ben has the spider sense effect, and Pat Broderick draws it like it's a bunch of like floating caterpillars trying to burrow into Ben's head. Yeah. And I was like, because you get so many different spider sense effects based on the artist. Like sometimes it like straight up looks like sperm floating around his head. But like this is one of the worst versions I've seen.
It's not good.
So Ben breaks out of his chains. He fights some more robots. Also a different set of robots, which are like humanoid looking people. And then they're robots. And that's supposed to be like, oh, I figured out they're robots. It's like, I don't care.
Yep.
And he saved Trainer. And then the only thing that stood out to me here is there's like these really awkward captions where it's like trying to explain Trainer's inner thoughts. And they go into this like religion versus science thing for like 4 panels. And I'm like, what is this?
The story has a message. This is literature.
And that's about it. And then we move into the final part.
Well, I've been hyping on this maybe too much, but Ben destroys a camera, and then whoever is behind this entire thing has a metal arm that smashes his own monitor. And it's definitely Doc Ock, right?
Like, it has to be.
Like, they never say, but it's definitely
Yeah, I mean, I think it probably is leading to that, because as we mentioned earlier, like this fourth part of Exiled totally has nothing to do with it, and we never get any, like, even part of a reveal of this disembodied voice that was fucking with Trainer and grabbed Ben, and so it has to come up later.
It could be literally anybody who has metal tentacle arms. So
he's dead. And now we move into the fourth part, and this is the contentious segment. We have Spider-Man Unlimited number 10.
I hate this book.
All right, so this is where I'm like, all right, the story's running great. Okay, this ain't great, but I can deal with it. I like, all right. There's enough like different issues to be like, it's not really all tied together, but like, I'm liking where this is going. Mm-hmm. And then this issue happened, which is the longest issue in the goddamn history of anything ever written in a comic book. And my enjoyment died because there's 3 moments in this book where I thought it was going to end, and it just keeps on going.
It's so rough.
And immediately upon opening this book, oh boy, it's time to use digital coloring because, dear God, does it look terrible.
So real quick, the cover here is Vulture grabbing Ben in a graveyard. It's whatever. The Vulture's playing with some of his own anatomy a little bit on the cover.
Yeah, his head is definitely growing out of his crotch.
And Mike just trashed on it a lot, but I still think this is an upgrade. Tom Lyle is gone.
Okay, like we talked about this before the show. It's an upgrade, yes, but like instead of like getting a gash in your leg, you just scrape it up a little bit, and it still hurts like a bastard. Like, it's still not great.
Wait, did you say Tom Lyle's gone forever?
From this series, and I believe Spider-Man.
Thank God.
I may double check just for you off air, but again, it's an upgrade, but it's not much of it. We don't get actual genuine writing talent on this book.
Well, it's because Mike Lackey's writing style is, and then. The
writer here is Mike Lackey, which I think is an unfortunate name if you are not excelling at what you're doing.
Yeah, I think it's fitting.
And Lackey was an assistant editor for the Spider-Man books, and as far as I can tell, he seems to be a protege.
Mike Lackey is not a person's real name.
It's
some intern who it's just a play on words for my lackey.
I mean, that could be it, but my lackey wrote a few things.
Some intern wrote a few things.
I mean,
they're different interns. It's not a name; it's a title.
Yep.
He co-wrote a bunch of stuff with DeFalco, and so intern maybe. He wrote all of Fantastic Four Unplugged, which was one of those similar to Spider-Man Unlimited. Let's just throw in another book because it's the 90s. And he had a short run on Silver Surfer around this time. So if it is really an intern that they just don't care about, I don't know why they're letting him write like 10 issues of Silver Surfer.
He's DeFalco's like nephew.
All right, I'm gonna preface with this. I think the name Mike Lackey is too much of a play on words to not be like a title carried around to different people that like filled in on stuff. If Mike Lackey turns out is a real person, I apologize. But the evidence is all there, man.
If Mike Lackey is a real person, we should like ask him to come on the show.
Yeah, we'll ask him to come. We'll send him a fruit basket. We'll get him an edible arrangements as a sorry.
Yes.
And we'll ask him to come up on the show and like reveal everything.
I would love that. Mike, if you're watching.
Mr. Lackey, if you're watching this podcast.
We gotta be polite.
So we're not fans of Lackey, but the art over here.
Why'd you just say that? We're gonna have him come on the show.
We no longer
have a hand basket and a fruit basket.
We no longer have 7 people penciling and inking the issue, which that's nice. But we have Sean McManus drawing, and his only other major work is he drew J.M. DeMatteis's Dr. Fate run for like 2 years. What do you guys think of the art here?
Very cartoony. Like for some reason, like I keep getting it's because the way that the style of the art and the colors keep reminding me of the 1990 Spider-Man cartoon.
Okay. Yeah, I see
So
that.
like if the comic, I'm sure the show probably had a tie-in comic or something. Like if the show had a tie-in comic that I'm like more known and stuff, I feel like this is what it would look like.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I don't think Ben's shoulders are quite wide enough. Other than that, yeah.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, it's definitely a step up from just the chaos of that we've had previously on Unlimited, but I was not a huge fan of this art. I don't know. Like, it seemed like maybe it was rushed or something like that because I like the cartoony style, but it's very inconsistent in this issue.
There's so moments when the faces in this look really, really bad.
Yeah.
I think a lot, if not most, of the problem in this issue are faces.
I would agree. Like the easily like the biggest problem. Like I'd say all the faces in this book are inconsistent to the like how cartoony and the style of them. Like almost all of them are different page to page.
For sure.
So picking up from our one-page subplot from last issue, Adrian Toomes, the Vulture, is turning old again.
Great. I don't care about the Vulture unless it's Michael Keaton.
And then we get introduced to the Mulligan family, and they're going through some shit.
Why is Spider-Man Unlimited all about like there's always like another subplot about a guy who's like fired from his job or like a family that's going through hell? Like why is that?
I mean, it made sense. Like, I think you could make an argument for it way earlier when it wasn't part of 4 and 5 part arcs. So it's like all the main books are like, here's this Clone Saga arc bullshit moving the plot forward, and then it's like Spider-Man Unlimited. Here's just some random Spider-Man saving the day story.
But like, it almost feels like every issue of Spider-Man Unlimited should just be called a very special issue of Spider-Man.
Very special.
Yeah, so Ben is tracking down the Vulture, and does he pay for this candy bar?
No, the guy tells him to take it because 50 cents isn't going to help him fix his car.
Yeah, that was my interpretation.
Yeah, he just gave it to him.
Yeah, he tells him the price, but it also seems like he clearly doesn't care that Ben's effectively taking it. So this is another instance. Last time it was Peter, but Spider-Man apparently they don't pay for snacks. And while he's stealing his snacks, he realizes that tonight is the anniversary of Uncle Ben's murder. So he's going to go visit the grave, which he did 2 issues ago. And this time it makes sense.
If I see another Force Ghost vision of Ben and May Parker putting their hand on Peter's shoulder while it's on a microscope, I'm gonna jump out a window or something. We've seen
really?
That's the one so many times.
Not Gwen Stacy dying.
This might be worse.
It's the same kind of thing of like seeing Batman's parents get killed. Like it's the same flashback always.
So then, and then similar to last time, there was a stalker, but at the graveyard. But this time it's Ben Reilly being the stalker, and he stalks Papa Mulligan. And we learn that Mulligan is a very close friend of Uncle Ben's, and he worked with him in the textile factory. And they helped each other to save one of their fellow workers. And then this Mulligan guy, he had always had dreams and plans of going to college and kind of rising his family up. And he couldn't do it because you have to pay your tuition up front. And so Uncle Ben gives him a loan and then dies just hours after. So the guy never cashed the check because he thought May and Peter would need it. And we'll get back to the conclusion of that. But Matt, what is your feeling on this Mulligan guy?
This story I think is kind of exhausting. I don't mind the idea that Ben knew a guy in a textile factory and like they were friends. You know, Ben Parker had his own life and he had friends and whatever. But I don't particularly care to see it.
Yeah. I don't know. I think it has potential, but obviously this is never going to come up again. So it's totally wasted. Like, it's in this one issue.
Right. Like Mulligan, what's his name? I don't remember.
Mulligan.
He's not going to be a supporting cast member going forward.
Yeah.
Right?
No.
Okay, so this kind of story concept is very, very simple, and it's something that Dan Jurgens has done a lot in like Superman stories that he's written. I'm fine with this because the stories are very like always usually very short, sweet, and to the point. This is long, drawn out, and exhausting. So I don't care.
Actually, thank you. You articulated that better than I could have. That's my problem as well. It's just it's so long that I stopped caring.
And so apparently Mulligan is explaining this entire backstory of his friend Ben Parker, like, out loud. And then Ben takes off his costume and then jumps out of a tree and is like, hey, I heard that entire thing. And can you give me a picture of your son? Because, by the way, Mulligan's son is like hanging around with some gangsters. So this random guy is like, oh, you knew my uncle. Can I have a picture of your son?
Because like his son's like, I'm not going to college, Dad. I'm gonna go join a gang and shoot people or whatever.
And now is the best time maybe to pull in that the Vulture is now an energy vampire who, in order to maintain his youth, it wasn't like a one-time thing where he just became young.
If you're watching this episode, you can just, that's the point where you pause the video and just you sit there and you just take a drink to just process what Vince just said, because he's not lying.
Yeah.
No. There's this great image of the Vulture in his terrible 90s outfit holding these defibrillator looking things. I guess is how he sucks energy out. Like,
the best part is those little devices. Like, like I would have rather they gone like full vampire where he's like sucking people's blood or something, or at least just like inserting something into their body. But like he like uses like a defibrillator in the air. It's so weird.
It's so bad. I hate everything about this.
So Jimmy Mulligan is going to go on a heist at an electronics warehouse, and while he's there, he might have to kill someone, and so he's like kind of already second guessing it. And Toombs even calls himself an energy vampire.
Yep.
And then we get a flashback where he recalls his last prison sentence and breakout, which we get the editor's note that went down in the 1994 Prowler miniseries, which I really wonder whether the 1994 Prowler series or the 2015 Prowler or 2016, whenever it was, Prowler series, which one is more relevant and better. I think that could be a tight race to the bottom. And in fact, so 94, that Prowler miniseries overlapped the Clone Saga, but it was not relevant, so I spared you guys from reading it.
You know what? You can tell us in the comments which is worse.
And so I guess this is, Vulture's already in his young 90s thing, but he turns old again in the paddy wagon. And so they rush him to the hospital, and then because he's old, he just like sneaks away and hides among the old people in the hospital, which allows him to escape. I thought that was
Where's that old man? I swear I left him right here.
Because they showed him like sneaking behind like the bed curtains, and he's like, I snuck in and disguised myself in the geriatric ward.
He's bald, has a very round head, and a beak-like nose. He's pretty identifiable in a crowd.
Oh, right? Like, hey, where's the old guy who looks like a vulture? It might be him.
So
I don't know, Frank. It might be that guy.
He needs these electronics too to upgrade his dumb harness so he can be a better energy vampire. So everyone's going to converge on this warehouse. And then we get there's one guard, and also this business is like bankrupt or something, which they refer to some story, which I think was before the Clone Saga. Or I think it was in that Prowler series, actually. Never mind.
God.
And there's this one guard there, and everyone just refers to him with these terrible nicknames that are patronizing. Like, he's called an old timer like 5 times.
Mhm.
Well, the thing is, they're going to outright kill this guard with a pocket knife, by the way.
Yeah, and then the Vulture shows up, crashes the party, and then Ben interrogates some guys that ran away when the Vulture got there. And that was like half funny, where he had two guards strung up with his webbing, or two thugs, and one of them is just like spilling the beans, and the other guy's like, "Shut the fuck up, stop snitching." And that was funny for like 2 lines. And Vulture grabs the guard and he drops him near a bridge, of course. I thought that was, yeah, and then Ben saves him, Gwen style.
Yep. So that brings the counter of Spider-Man saving someone from a bridge not named Gwen Stacy / also named a clone of Gwen Stacy up to about what now? Like 5 in this podcast?
Getting up there.
It's got to be something like that, yeah.
And the guard, apparently, while he's been a guard for so long, because remember, he's an old timer, he's been reading manuals. And so somehow he knows everything about the electronics. And they don't explain it here. And then Ben just explains it to the audience at the very, very end. So Ben somehow went out and grabbed a rubber shirt, which allows him to beat the Vulture.
Yeah, he wears like a sex thing. It's like a BDSM rubber suit.
Yeah, and he obviously I see the visual first, so I'm like, how did a bulletproof vest help? And then he's like, oh, I'm wearing a rubber swimming shirt or something. I'm like, okay, that's worse.
Yep.
And that's pretty much like the Vulture stuff gets wrapped up like pretty anticlimactically and doesn't matter. But then let's get back to the Mulligan family.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Little Jimmy runs back to his mob boss and he just gets his ass beat. We see the boss like put on like special gloves with like brass knuckles in them. And then he gets dropped off the hospital.
Those things to hit himself in the eye, and I thought they were a joke. When they popped up here, I was like, wow, those things actually exist. And they're just as comedic as they were then.
And so he shows up at the hospital, and then his dad goes out to kill the boss. And again, like, I feel like there's missed writing potential here. Like, they could have shown, like, oh, the boss also grew up or was, like, familiar with Ben and Mulligan. And there was a moment where they're like
30 pages?
Yeah, I mean, but there was like a moment where they're both exhausted and like talking to each other, and it's like they don't do anything with it. And then
right, like you could contrast how Mulligan followed Ben Parker's teachings and this other guy didn't, and it's like it's thematic and it will still suck, but it would be better than this.
And Ben stops them from killing each other, basically. And the Mulligans are happy. And Ben, of course, shows up pretending to be Peter Parker and was like, oh, all I could do was show all my reporter friends. Like, basically pretending that he didn't do shit.
Right.
And they offer, and again, like, this is what I was saying. They offer him to save for supper. Like, yo, you're like the nephew of my best friend. And he's like, nah, I'm good. Like, I'm not saying like Papa Mulligan would be the next best supporting character in the Spider-Man mythos, but like you could have totally gone with this for like pop up in another arc, at least.
Right. Like they kept the homeless. I can't remember his name. Michael, the homeless football player.
Oh, Rich Gannon.
Yeah, they kept Rich Gannon around for like 3 issues.
And one thing I didn't mention, that's pretty much the end of Exiled, which was like 3 arcs, which didn't solve anything. What I didn't mention is we get 1 page of Peter in his costume grabbing groceries, and he gets a vision similar to Kane of his dead wife. And so, yeah, like coming out of Maximum Clonage was like, all right, we're going to figure out who is going to be Spider-Man. And then at the end of Maximum Clonage, it's like, all right, let me think about that for a bit. And then it's like, this arc's going to do it. And then like it flips for a second and then flips back. And then at the end, there's 0 advancement.
Well, the arc becomes something else entirely.
Yeah.
I mean, part 4 is really, like I said, shouldn't even be part of this.
No, it's entirely
a 2-part story.
Yeah, yeah. This last issue was entirely unrelated. It's some random Vulture story.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the arc focused mostly on Ben, and now we move into, thankfully, a significantly shorter arc. We have the two-part Time Bomb, which we start in Spectacular Spider-Man 228. And at least this cover, and we'll get into it as we go along the book, but this cover works for Sienkiewicz. We have Peter crazed out of his mind, menacing over MJ.
You want to talk about the Time Bomb logo word art there? Holy shit, it's the 90s.
It's the 90s.
Holy crap. Like, it's actually, it verges almost on early 2000s with how bad it looks.
So apparently this cover was revised after Marvel received a minor controversy from when Peter hit MJ.
Oh, this is the revised version. So in the first one, he was what, strangling her?
So in the first version, apparently one of his fists was clenched and his other hand was like clenching her wrist or something. So I mean, it's still like up a notch, but nothing like crazy. He's not actually hitting her on the other cover. And so again, DeFalco plotting, which he's supposed to be the writer in this book, but DeZago is scripting. And we have the usual Buscema Sienkiewicz art team. And
I think. No, go ahead.
I think off the bat, the first 2 pages, I'm like, God damn it, fucking Kane is back.
Yeah.
I thought this was almost the beginning of like some weird twisted Christmas story because the time bomb thing on it looks like a Christmas ornament falling. I was like, ooh, Kane's here. It's Christmas. What's going to happen? Oh, wait. No, it's not.
And so it seems like Kane is back trying to kill MJ, but it's a nightmare. And it ends with Kane. Of course, it's a nightmare, so it doesn't matter. But it ends with Kane teasing that Pete is the killer.
Speaking of Kane, quick shout out to Glenn Jacobs, who played Kane in the WWE, for winning Mayor of Knox County, Tennessee yesterday. Congratulations to him.
Oh, congratulations to all of Knox County.
Yep.
And,
he's going to change things.
Again, like we get another scene of Pete waking up from a nightmare. We don't quite get the full sweat effect from earlier, but Sienkiewicz, he works on this panel.
Yeah.
There's like specifically this arc. I'm like, okay, this one arc, I can see Sienkiewicz.
I think this issue is the best, the most fitting at least that we've seen Sienkiewicz so far.
Yeah,
with the most exception of Free Face
in a long time.
Yes.
And Pete sees the jackal in a mirror, and then I always like seeing the Bugle scenes. The Bugle's getting rebuilt after maximum clonage because he got trashed. Mm-hmm. And again, just higher damage control. Like, I don't care if it's a premium, they're going to get it done and get it done quickly. We see in this panel a lot of these workers, they're slacking off. This guy painting, he's spilling some paint on his buddy.
I didn't even notice that. Oh god. Yes,
just out of curiosity, do you know how many issues Damage Control ran?
It was a series of miniseries. I think there were 3 miniseries, pretty much all in a row within like 10 years. They're all written by Dwayne McDuffie, and then I don't think it gets revived again until like there was a World War Hulk tie-in, and at that point, if he wasn't dead already, rest in peace, it wasn't McDuffie. There was a Damage Control complete collection
of just the initial minis.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's everything, but like 90% of it is the McDuffie stuff. So like whatever, you just deal with the filler.
Okay.
And like I was saying, Pete is having doubts about his photography career. He talks about continuing school, and I guess he finally gets around to that, but like 10 years from now, when he becomes a teacher and all that.
Right.
And also the way they set that up is like Angela Yin pops up, and I believe she was introduced within the Clone Saga. We talked about her when she was introduced, and she's like Ben Urich's like Asian American female reporter buddy.
Okay, which is very weird because in Superman the Animated Series, there is an Asian female reporter in Metropolis named Angela Chen, who is friends with Lois Lane.
Ooh.
So, is Ben Urich Superman?
Maybe so. Hyper time. Also, the editor's note here tells us that the Smoke and Mirrors arc is highly sought after, which that was where Jack first appeared. So it's highly sought after by at least Billy.
I mean, but he has it, so it's no longer sought after.
Oh, it has been found.
But let's play up with her thing. It is a highly sought after thing because it's the only 4 appearances of Jack.
Yep. And MJ's maternity clothes gig is promising, as we mentioned earlier.
It's promising because it could continue past maternity.
Yeah, and also they said that weird. I'm like, what does that mean?
Yeah, throughout her pregnancy and beyond.
Yeah, like, is she going to transition away from maternity clothes? Or are they expecting her to get
start modeling mom jeans? That's what it means.
It does. It means mom jeans, and you know MJ can rock mom jeans.
I'm now just thinking of the SNL skit with Mary Jane and the mom jeans ad.
Honestly, like, this is probably totally on me, but like the way I was reading it, even in the first sequence, like 4 issues ago, I was like, is her like agent, like this Rolf guy, is he like trying to hit on her? Like on this pregnant married woman?
Kind of. I thought it kind of seemed like that.
Yeah, it was really weird. I really hope that's not a plot line that's going to pop up.
Yeah, I have no interest in that story.
So it turns out that the Jackal implanted a mental trigger in Pete's clone mind. And of course, when we eventually realize that Pete is not a clone, I don't know how this makes sense retroactively. And when he died in Maximum Clonage, he set the trigger off. And so Pete is going to kill MJ. And then while MJ is reflecting on her new modeling gig, there's this super fucking weird quote where she says, "This is the 90s. Women are bringing babies into every workplace." I'm like, what?
Yeah, what? I don't know what that means. But okay.
Let's all go ask our parents. In the 90s, was everyone bringing their kids there?
And so MJ comes home and Pete's sitting there and he's like, run. And then she hits him with a lamp, which I like that. That was fun.
Yeah, I think
says, the Avengers, the FF, stop the kill me before. And I was like thinking, okay, the Avengers, the FF, and the next panel's the goddamn New Warriors.
Yep.
Yeah, I was like, I don't know. I was trying to think through this because MJ's perspective is, first of all, Ben is a member of the New Warriors. Ben's got clone experience. He's going to understand it. But also, like, her assumption is that the Avengers, like Captain America or Reed Richards, are going to try and kill Peter Parker. Like, that's going to be their first option.
Right.
That's the way she rationalizes it. And I'm like, I don't know.
And at this point, from here throughout the rest of the issue, I started to actually really dig how Sienkiewicz draws Pete. I think he makes Spider-Man, even with the mask on, look deranged and terrifying, and yeah. I really like that.
From this Captain Logan a few issues ago was talking about how Spider-Man always kind of seemed menacing because like he was younger when this stuff was coming out, so like Spider-Man always looked kind of more menacing and evil, and I can totally understand that after reading this issue.
Yes, because he looks like a villain, and
yeah, especially on the cover too.
Yeah.
On the other hand, as far as things that Sienkiewicz still does not remotely fit with, I still fucking hate. Well, no, I mean it's still underneath. I like Buscema's MJ, so MJ's not terrible in my opinion in most of this. Like she's not horrid, but Sienkiewicz's New Warriors looks so bad, and like Speedball looks like
it's just because the New Warriors are bad.
70s.
Actually, I mean, honestly, Speedball, I'm seeing some freak face in Speedball.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Well, his hair is absolutely ridiculous.
Well, the thing is, it should be ridiculous, but Sienkiewicz doesn't know how to pull off the good ridiculous. So it's this really weird, like hippie, terrible ridiculous instead of like this just crazy '90s kid, like in an impulse kind of way. And yeah, so then MJ gets on the subway to head to the New Warriors or meet them halfway. And Pete gets on the subway and he's stalking her. And I like these scenes where he's like creeping in the window. He's like, where is she? And she gets to the stop and there's a double-page spread of the New Warriors. And Ben is still not there. And I was like, okay. I mean, the double-page spread it's all right.
It's okay. It's by this point I'm still being like the Avengers, the FF, the Defenders, the Midnight Suns. Like any other team would have been cooler than the New Warriors. I'm just saying.
I mean, I would say the version of the Defenders that would exist at this point, you don't want to see them.
Are they the New Warriors?
No, but they're worse.
No? So yeah, I would like to see them.
So then, final issue, we have Web of Spider-Man 129. Ben finally shows up for this cover, and he's being lifted by Pete in front of the Warriors. And this scene does not happen in the issue. We have, again, the Zago scripting with the Falco's plots. And we have Stephen Butler drawing, as usual, on this series.
Well, just doing the breakdowns. But
Ben shows up to the New Warriors crash pad, and he hangs out with Hindsight for a little bit.
Right, and Hindsight is just like, he's just Oracle or
no, don't even compare him to her.
I mean, Microchip. Yeah. He's like Microchip.
Yeah, role wise,
comparable. He's just some brat kid who found out Speedball's identity and barged his way into the New Warriors.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
He's
their modern duty guy, but he's also like this weird, creepy groupie who's obsessed with superheroes.
He's also
the guy in the chair.
And I'll note now that this arc takes place in the middle of the New Warriors issues that we cover in our standalone New Warriors episode. So those who followed along with that, Firestar and Speedball's powers aren't acting up yet. So Firestar isn't worried about her eggs getting fried by her microwave powers. So she's not rushing her relationship with Justice yet.
That's a plot point.
After learning about how Firestar's powers work, I kind of have like very harsh doubts about with her being like, a superhero, because like the way those powers work, she's just going to end up giving everyone cancer.
Yep.
She's an amazing friend. What's going on here? Like this is not.
Spider-Man is an amazing friend. ... Who can give you cancer?
Yeah, cancer woman. Is Spider-Man, Iceman, and Cancer Woman.
I liked. There's like a one-page sequence where Speedball's like, "I got a great plan," and then he just fucks up. And then Ben finally shows up, and we have kind of a car chase. MJ gets in a cab, and then Pete rips off the roof, and the cab driver's just like, I don't deal with this. I drive a cab, not a sardine can.
Yeah.
And so MJ is just like, all right, I'm taking the keys.
What about if he drove an Uber?
That she would not be sitting there waiting for the Uber.
What if MJ's like, oh man, my husband tried to kill me.
Uber, MJ's not getting a 5-star rating. That's all I'm saying.
She's flipping between Uber and Lyft, whichever one comes first. All right, and then she crosses a bridge, and Peter's like, why is she heading to the bridge? And for a second, I thought she was going to jump off the bridge.
Same here.
I hope that was going to trigger Pete to save her and like knock him out of it.
Yep, that's what I thought as well.
But instead, I don't really know if the alternate plans that makes that much more sense. She goes to Aunt May's house, and Pete takes a shortcut through the sewers to get the New Warriors off his tail. And that was funny for like a panel. And she makes a quick comment about like getting ammunition. And I thought she was going to get her gun, which I'm pretty sure we saw like a bunch of arcs ago. I thought she was going to like threaten to shoot her husband. But ammunition is a bunch of pictures on the walls. And I wasn't sure. So in my headcanon, she like ran up to the attic, grabbed all the extra pictures, and then put them all up on the wall real quickly, like extra pictures. Like coated the walls with pictures. Because it almost even looks like that, but it's not clear whether she just showed up and was like, oh, all the photos are here.
Well, I mean, it could also be the room at Aunt May's house where she like paper her wall with photographs.
Yeah.
I guess people have that in their room.
And yeah, and then Pete shows up and it works, and then he hugs her, and Ben shows up outside the window and is like, oh, it worked, and then swings away. And I'm like, what if it didn't work? What if it was like a temporary snap, because this entire time he's been trying to resist it?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what if it was like, all right, it was just barely not enough, and then he just snaps her neck while Ben swings away.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know. I mean, obviously it's bullshit, like implanted memory triggers in a clone body. It doesn't make any sense, but like they didn't explain this at all. So it's like, how did this get solved? Whatever. And that's basically over. That's it.
That's the story. It just kind of ends.
Yeah.
And so I guess the idea is Maximum Cohen's we're supposed to transition it. Let's delay that. Exiled, let's transition it. It doesn't happen at all. And then this, it's like Peter's going to do something really fucked up, but then get totally excused from it. And then that will lead to the transition. I don't know how this has anything to do with the plot of the Clone Saga at all.
I don't know.
As far as advancing it. So that was that. Next episode, we are finally passing the torch, I think. And also, interesting next episode is the introduction of a new title. We'll start reading Spider-Man Team Up, which may be bad, like Unlimited, but at least it'll be different creators each time, and we'll have guest appearances to look forward to.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's as far, I guess, getting into final thoughts. I thought the two issues that actually should have been titled Exiled were all right, and this, like, I enjoyed the issue that was part one. It was okay. It was like a good one-off issue of them just fighting a villain, saving Black Cat. That was all right. It was a fast, quick read.
Mm-hmm.
Spider-Man Unlimited is, as it always is, the drizzling shits.
Mm-hmm.
And it, even if it is 1% better, it's still awful. And you know what? I enjoyed this Time Bomb. That was a fun two issue story. It was fun.
Yeah, like I found myself having some fun while reading this, which, that's kind of new.
Yeah, it was like, okay, this is a little fun here. That's like, it was like kind of like a breather after Maximum Clonage. Like, I wasn't on that episode, but like that was a slog to get through, I felt.
Yeah, like, don't get me wrong, they're bad comics. They're not good, but I had some fun with it.
Yeah, I was having fun, and I wasn't as harsh as you guys on like the Unlimited issue and stuff like that. But for me, I'm getting more and more frustrated because we're now grinded to a halt and things are not moving along. And so that was what was frustrating me here.
Yeah, that is a thing, but I felt like, I don't know, you have this giant story in Maximum Clonage. It's okay to take a breather for a little bit.
And honestly, I have a feeling it's not going to pick up anytime soon.
Yeah.
I think we need to get used to this halt.
Yeah, that's like, if this were to be like the thing, and then we jump into the next bigger, like, things start moving along again, fine, that's great. But exactly, I have a feeling that things are not going to move along.
No.
Well, I don't know if it'll be worse, the screeching halt and things not moving along, or the several giant plot holes which are about to pop up that we will be dealing with.
I'm excited for it.
Tune in to future episodes for that, and thanks for watching. Peace.